Thank you guys for coming today to our featured speaker event. I was just letting you know that I will just place you on mute for the event, just so we can hear Kevin clearly. And then afterwards, we'll open it up for some discussion and questions, which is always a fun time. So I'm honored to present Kevin. He is actually the first person I ever got to know in the XR field, and he is really awesome. He's a great guy. Today, he will be discussing his AR program called Moment AR. And it's a tool designed to help autism, mental health, along with language and social skills. And I believe he'll be getting into a bit about the business and entrepreneur side of it. And he has a very impressive resume. So I'm really excited to welcome Kevin.
Yay! Clap, 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 clap. Clap, 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 clap. I'm trying to do like I'm really on stage. Clap, clap. Oh, you guys, knock it off. Oh. Stop it, really. Well, thank you, Mia, for that. That was great. Thank you, everyone. This is actually my also first time on Altspace and everything, so I find that this is pretty funny. So if you need me to like talking and dragging off the stage, that's me just still getting used to the system. So yeah, so like Mia said, I created Moment AR, which for the few years it's been out has a huge history, and my name is Kevin Chaja, and I'm just gonna hit the slide. Hang on a second, let me just go to the slide deck. There we go. Yeah, so there's my big, gorgeous profile pic. Let me kind of stand over here. My previous history, I was actually really heavy into post-production, which is more like the color correction side of things. So regarding movies or TV shows or anything created, once it's in the coloring aspect, then it goes through final renders and then attach the audio, and that's what you get live put in the theaters and streaming and whatnot. But some of the big recent ones that are notable is I was the head QA for Dolby Vision. If you go to buy a TV right now, you'll probably see Dolby Vision on the bottom left or right-hand corner. Also, when you stream right now, you'll see the HD options. Yeah, so but the big thing was, and then you like with Netflix and whatnot, you'll see like Dolby Vision. It's pretty much a high dynamic range. That's a whole nother discussion. But I was a part there. I was the executive director at Sony Pictures Entertainment, which is a two-part job, was to continue all the high dynamic range research and approvals. But the other half of it, which was working with AR VR. So I would say that's the first kind of commercial business side I was into. AR and VR, which I kind of helped out with Passengers, the video game, also with a whole bunch of titles for Crackle, which was a video streaming content thing for Sony. But also my main job was to look at a whole bunch of different devices and new tech coming out. And one of them was for the Merge Cube by Merge VR. I'm not sure if as many of you have heard of Merge at all. They make the little small cube that works with augmented reality. Okay, most people have. Perfect. But I'll look into that afterwards. Obviously, I created Moment AR, which I'll talk about a little bit, which Mia introduced it. It's a tool, it's an app that works with that device, and it's a tool for autism, mental health, language, and social skills. And I co-built that with my wife, who's a school psychologist here in Burbank, California. Another quick blurb we'll go to talk to a little bit is that app was attached to my company Color Black at the time, and I actually sold that to a company, which was pretty amazing. And with all the research and everything, it got to now patent pending the method for objectively tracking and analyzing the social and emotional activity of a patient. And so from here, it's the, I'm going to talk about how I created it. Just go into quick clip notes. I can literally talk about the creation of Moment for hours, but I'm kind of dive through a whole clip note version. One of the things was idea from a need. So literally when I was at Sony, I mentioned I met a whole bunch of people. I'm just going to go, I hear a little feedback. I met a whole bunch of people. One of them I met was the Merge guys when they showed me the Merge Cube. And I couldn't have anything, think of it for Sony Pictures production. But what I did do was I took it home and I was kind of messing with it, kind of building stuff. I was still learning the Unity game engine at the time. And luckily, my wife was right next to me, and she was just really venting that day about, I'm like, what's up? And she goes, hey, I'm trying to help assess this kid. And it's funny, she's been a school psychologist for like 10 plus years. I never really asked her, what the problem was or anything. I really want to dive into it where, her job is like she has to assess a child in schools, which means like she has 8 weeks at 30 minutes a session to assess, to properly to help identify what's possibly wrong with the kid, or the biggest keyword out of the whole thing is to assess the child so that they can get on their way to either be like trauma, PTSD, ED, something to help to aid. But I asked, I'm like, well, what do you do to sit down with the child? She goes, I do anything, even maybe play Uno. And I was like, you play Uno with like a 6-year-old kid? She goes, hey, whatever it takes to get the child to sit down and kind of work through him. And I'm like, okay, that's interesting. I had this thing here called a merge cube. And she goes, what is it? Which is that little, here, I can probably go to that little device right up here that you'll see. And it's from a company called Merge VR. And their thing is that if you buy this thing and you can project stuff onto it, it's pretty much a flavor of augmented reality that's a tangible, holdable object. Now, what makes interesting out of this when we start talking about the prototyping is that she needed something for assessment. She needed something to lock in and engage with the child, right? Which we all know here, and we're all here, that VR alone is engaging enough, and especially with augmented reality. But the other thing, too, is with this Merge Cube, I can have it work off your cell phone, which is like pretty, like everyone, I think at 80% of the older teachers had iPhones. So I can get work right up. So they didn't have to buy a device or they didn't have to troubleshoot a machine. They could just open up their cell phone and just use it. So over that weekend, I built the prototype. And, I say this on every speaking thing because it's pretty funny, but I didn't know really, Unity at the time. So literally all I did to teach myself how to code was I got like the development SDK kit from Merge, which they gave me a Merge Cube. They gave me the development kit. And I got a bottle of Patron tequila. I literally drank all weekend for 2 days and built a proof of concept. And what's great about, I used Unity. At that time, the software development kit only used for Unity. But what I love about Unity, and I tell people this, is that Unity, there's just like a whole store of free stuff where I'm able to build stuff, especially for previz. Previz equals it's like prototype showing. Like there's no really mechanics on it. It's kind of showing what the final app could possibly look like. But what I did was I asked her, I'm like, hey, there's 6 sides of this the cube. People are able to hold it. What else do you need? What do you need visually on the screen? And she goes, well, how about kind of like all the emotions? Because I want them to express emotion. And everyone knows from a cube here, the cube has 6 sides. So we had the 5 emotions of happy, sad, disgust, fear, boredom, and angry. And I'm like, hey, I have 5. Like, I mentioned in the element, but the 6 missing one, she was like, hey, put boredom on there. So I put boredom on there, and then next thing you know, Monday morning, she has a big old proof of concept on her cell phone and starts using the app. And she used the app with her first child, and within a couple minutes, actually within a couple seconds, the kid was locked in, engaged, and immersive. So he was holding the cube just like this with the video you see around there, right in front of the iPad, and he's talking about emotions. But what's interesting about that, what's interesting from the medical special education from a professional standpoint, the data she was collecting was deemed, we call it comments per session, which was key words that he otherwise wouldn't said. So perfect example. At the time, at the prototype for SAD, I had a static Sonic the Hedgehog character. He was literally just standing there just like doing this, no movement or anything. And the child was locked in, engaged on SAD, so my wife just started, as a school psychologist, emphasized it. Like, why do you think that character feels sad? And what he was doing was then answering for the character, not himself, which he otherwise wouldn't say. So he goes, well, that character's sad because he's alone. So my wife goes, alone? That's an interesting word. Why do you think he used the word alone? And then the child is like, well, he's alone because his friends didn't tell him what to do. So that's why he's going to be alone, and I don't want to be like him. So just from those few words, and obviously a little more usage from the professional, which was the school psychologist, she was able to diagnose that he's a peer pressure case, that he's lashing out due to peer pressure, and was able to properly assess him further going on. Now, as an engineer developer, a 1-out-of-1 test case that's successful means nothing. If some of you guys are developers here or in medical practice, you need to baseline at least 100 test cases before you go further with anything else, especially if you're just developing other tools. Like, you need data is what you need. So I thought it was pretty good. Use it again, no big deal. The hour or 2 hours later, she uses one girl that was diagnosed as emotionally disturbed, severely acting out in class, especially in the morning. So the teacher brings her a case, like, can you please assess this child? We think she has ED. So same thing. She gives her the cube, locked in, engaged, and immersive, and within 30 seconds, starts using it. And this time around, a couple minutes around fear, I have a fear character right now, but fear at the time I had like an idle skeleton kind of moving around like this. Now, obviously, I got rid of weapons, skeletons, and everything. It's the key demographic around this is around K through 5. But at the time, there was an idle skeleton, and she just kept looking at it. And so, again, my wife said, why do you think that's, that scared, skeleton's deemed fear, so why do you think that's, what's wrong with that? Why do you keep centering on that? And the child was able to express that, further down the line, that she didn't want to be like that skeleton because she didn't want to die. And my wife pushed the child further, and you find out that her favorite uncle died 2 months ago in a car accident in the morning. So she feels like she's going to get a car accident on her way to work, so on the way to school. So she refuses to get in the car. So by the time she gets to school, she's all anxiety, she's all riled up. That's a reaction just off the death in her family. And so my wife was like, oh, she's not emotionally disturbed. This is like a PTSD trauma case, and was able to properly assess. Now, that's 2 out of 2 really good cases that she got in mere minutes within a 1 hour spread. She goes to her board and psych and shows them the tool and everything. Everyone got all excited. They brought me in for a meeting. That's when I met OTs and SLPs, and I'm just like, what in the world's an occupational therapist? What in the world's a speech-language pathologist? And lo and behold, from that, they kind of gave me the notes, and I started kind of building the app. I think I engaged with all that. Yeah, I did. So let me flip the slide. I'm going to go all crazy right here. Cool. And then the app pretty much got released. As you see, there's the top over here is, that's what the default app looks like. That's kind of the language module. So there's a couple modules. The emotions module, that is the module for autism mental health, which is all the emotions, and there's 6 sub-emotions for the other one. So for like anger, you can see anger, and then you can click on them, and there's 6 sub-emotions, so all the anger. So there's like anger with jealousy, anger towards another person, anger towards self. Another module is for languages. This was a request from speech language pathologists, so it's tiered action verbs in it, so they can say like this one right here, like he's working out or lifting weights. Happy, I think, is like jumping and throwing a ball, so jumping, throwing. This last one right here is like a social skills module, which you have 2 people pinned in the middle of the cube. There's 6 different variations of it, and you kind of talk about the social settings, like, oh, they're both playing with blocks. What game are they playing? And then you project it onto the other user, like, do you have any friends you play with? What's his or her name? What games do you play with them? But yeah, I mean, what's great about the app, it brought all this research and everything that was brought up to it, all the way up to adults using it, which on LinkedIn, this one marriage counselor messaged me and said, hey, I love your app. I'm using it in my practice. I'm like, you're using it for your practice? What are you using it for? And she was just pretty much, oh, I use it as a talking stick. And I'm like, what? She goes, yeah, I go to each emotion. I attach it to the iPad. I have them handed off to each other. And you're only allowed to talk when you have, obviously, the talking stick in your hand, so the merge tube and iPad. And through each one, you just talk about each emotion. So, hey, I feel anger because of this. I feel anger. And one of the big research points out of all that, which tied to the patent, which was it's using the getting you the social emotional values through projection. So although you're like, I might be feeling okay, whatever, I might express like, well, I'm feeling angry because I hate being at home all the time, or I feel sad because I am at home all the time. So it's using the projected characters' emotions to kind of bring out otherwise what they wouldn't say. So great. So it's launched. It was in the App Store and everything, fantastic. And then my wife sat down once we saw in the iOS and Android store. We saw my app was like, so are we rich? Because at the time we were selling it for $49.99. And after 2 weeks, I think we sold $400. We made $0. And I'm like, okay, well, I don't know really what I'm doing. I just kind of figured you launch an app on the App Store and suddenly millions of people will buy or download it and everything else and go from there. And that's exactly not what happened. One of the biggest things I found out is what I didn't properly do, and this kind of alludes to the entrepreneurial business side, especially when you're dealing with special education and the medical field, is I didn't have any baseline data. If I go up to psychologists and say, use my tool, look at all the cool things it was, I was co-built by my wife and everything, the first thing they're going to say is, cool, where's the data? And I'm like, there is none. So the first thing I had to do was we made a poster, and I was like a good D+ student, C- student in college, Cal State Northridge, and I've never done a poster in my life. So this was actually my first poster. So you see in the top left, my wife and I attacked this poster together, which kind of showed the 3 key things, right? We did a 5-kid baseline, which shows, you can see in the middle figures right there, it's the immersion engagement, and then the last one is the comment per session. That's the one I was saying you're getting key feedback notes than anyone else. And then, yeah, we showed that the California Association of School Psychologists, I think around 2017, and we got accepted as a poster. So that was one of our first key data, and then things started picking up from there. The next thing I did was, you got to market, right? So the next thing I had to do was show off to all the big events. That's when I found about NASP, the National Association of School Psychologists. That's like their 1 year, that's their comparable ISTE in special education. And then there's another one for ASHA. ASHA is more of the speech language pathologists, occupational therapy. That's their version of ISTE. So the left one you'll see that's from NASP. That's actually John Kelly. He's actually the president of NASP. And he bought the Merge Cube in the app at the time. That was like our little booth there. It was pretty cool. And then to the right is when we were showing it at ASHA, which was cool because some people couldn't be there, so they had these remote drones walking around. So this was kind of like a demo inception where I showed the app and the demo with him using that little peg robot thing. I'm not sure what that thing robot was called, but it was still pretty cool. So yeah, so then what I had to do was execute, I call it the napkin business plan, where it's like, hey, what I have to do is not only do I have to show everyone the app, but I have to show everyone what augmented reality is on top of Merge Cube. So when I first started, which is funny, that I think demos took like 35 minutes each demo, which was horrible. But once I got the data and everything, and especially attaching that was co-built with the school psychologist, the demos I got them down to like 5 or 10 minutes, and I was turning people like crazy, and things were actually getting pretty good. This actually, then it got to the potential patent. I've never done a patent anymore, and if any of you here have done a patent, it is a pain in the butt. There is no better word on it. It's a ton and ton of writing, and pretty much you need to attach it to a white paper. So instead of me going through the whole patent process, these are just kind of quick visualizations of the patent. It's the method of taking the data from the computer and the cube in both a VR and AR stage, and then putting it into a mathematical formula to maybe possibly assess emotion. So the sum of that is, what if I thought the Merge Cube with the emotions on it, I gave it to any one of you out there, and I had you answer 6 questions, and you didn't say one word. It just took the gyroscope data, and I'm able to see what level of emotion you are through those questions. And then technically, what I've made is a screener. Now, from the business case, I could take that screening data and pump it into professional companies and everything, but that's part of the patent. That's the big gist of the patent right there. So because I had all that and everything, a company reached out to me, and it went from a partnership talk full-blown to acquisition. Yay! Acquisition was probably the most exciting thing, because I believe I launched in September, and I believe February next year, so I think only a live life of 5 months, it was in the acquisition talk. I won't go into the details, but I'll just say that when I signed that contract right there, they had my lawyer send it. They had minimum 1 hour to send me 1/5 of the paycheck they owed me, and it was just really, really cool. Part of the acquisition, when I say acquisition, is I sold the company, so the app was attached to the company Color Black. All research attached, so obviously that patent gets attached to it as well. And then Acquihire, I think I spelled that right. I don't know, but the Acquihire was also me become on CTO. One thing, I think that's the purpose I put there, Acquihire. I've never heard of that before until that happens. And that's actually a really big thing within companies right now. When you see companies just buying out other companies, you're pretty much buying a team or a person or somebody coming out. And I want to really allude to this because it follows my slides going on later, which is that's the key thing they wanted, was they wanted a kind of a guy who started from a whiteboard idea all the way to prototype, all the way up to a live product, all the way up to business development and acquisition and legal. Like, they wanted that person to answer that whole field. And I want to really emphasize that because it kind of led me to my path this day, without me really realizing it till right now. So great. So I was hired. I'm getting money and everything, which the one thing I'll say about money is don't believe everything you see. When someone says you got $1 million, $2 million, $5 million, $5 billion, you don't just get $5 billion and it goes into your pocket. A huge chunk of that goes into my lawyer. I would know because I see my lawyer every year, and I spend at least a couple $100 with him on a steak dinner just to have him trying to reimburse a 100th of what I paid him in lawyer fees. But that's one of the things you need lawyers. Talking about the acquisition stuff could be a whole nother talk in itself, but I'm just going to keep chugging forward. And then I'm pretty sure everyone's seen this meme of Pablo Escobar and the Narcos thing, the Bad News Bears, where 9 months later I got a call saying, guess what, Kevin? We can't afford the acquisition or U.S. CTO anymore. and most people would think this is the worst news in the world. I just had to digest that. And what does that mean? Well, usually this, parts of it could be deemed breach of contract or whatever. I'll spare all the lawyer talk. I'll just say this is that I'm like, okay, well, I'm not into suing anyone. I don't think that's fun. I'm more of a guy that likes to move forward, and I don't live in the past. So I'm like, let's do this. Give me the app back, all my research, and all business development I got that associated to me. We'll call it an even trade. And we broke away amicably. So that's great. I mean, the big caveat of all that is obviously you don't get your rest of your checks. But, I got everything back. And if anything, I sold a company and a bill of sale under my resume. And I feel like that's worth more than anything, even though my lawyers would disagree. But that's why I got lawyers. Like they're supposed to be the wizards of my pessimism or optimism or whichever angle you view that as. So then what happened? So then I got everything back, and I got back to Merge, and I'm like, hey, guys, funny story. Remember that app I sold? Well, I'm back. I'm going to re-release it, and this time I released it as free. At the time, which I'll allude to in the next slides, I was busy doing other stuff, which I'll more, but I was like, hey, I'm going to release it for free. Let me come demo it and kind of showcase off. So this was me, I believe a year ago at FETC and ISTE. The jacket is the one to really show off. If anything, you're here because of that jacket. That was an amazing jacket I saw in Hollywood that was way too much money, but it literally borderline had my name on it. It was so great. And then what's great is I made a top hat, which I just printed out the Merge Cube, which the apps and stuff work on it, which I should post some of the reviews on Twitter. It was really, really funny. And I kind of label myself as the top hat guy. And what's great about that is during the whole show, everyone thought I was like the owner of Merge, which I'm like, no, I'm not. I don't know why I'm doing this. I'm having fun. And that's the whole key. It's like this new revamp of whatever. I'm having more fun, all the business stuff taken away. I feel like I got what I got out of it. And I released. This is when it comes with the acquihire one. I really want to emphasize showing this is that because I built an app from whiteboard all the way to product release, and I was able to have it acquired, all that experience was very, very valuable. I didn't realize until I started gaining contracts galore. So the top left was to be a biz dev guy for Digital Film Tree, which is a post-production company. In the smack middle there with the cookies on my face, I did that. You'll probably see me wearing a Shark Tank sweater. Sony actually contracted me out to start and build automation workflow for them, which I can't go into details of that, but it was a Sony contract. You can't complain with that. The top right over here, so let me walk right over here, is I built something with the HP and their Omen division, so that's like their gaming division. I did a proof of concept for them, so that's my good-looking self in the all-black suit thinking I'm Johnny Cash. For you VR people out here, I've never really touched VR stuff, which I'm ashamed of, but there's just so much stuff in augmented reality, my brain can't hold everything. But in the bottom right here, I actually built a VR arcade. That was the first starting of it for Skyzone, and we're going to make a franchise out of it. That was actually going to be a big money thing, and guess what happened? Of course, COVID happened, and I don't know what's going to happen with that, but the great thing about that is I like Vive. I think Vive's really cool. I don't think there is a business case yet for the for Oculus, so I think Vive Pro was the first business approved, meaning like you could put into a business and make money off whatnot. But they have their Vive Arcade, which was great. So I think the whole setup for 3 different stations took me an hour each, and I probably 50 minutes out of each one was just deboxing everything and getting everything to work. But I got it all up and running, and what's great is like you with the Vive software as well, you can all developers get their cut. It's not like you buy a $20 game and you could abuse it and make money off of it. Like every time you use a game with a customer paying, they get a cut of it. And what's great, I'm emphasized right here too, in the bottom left over here, a book, Reality Bites, by a couple of authors that I know, had me co-author a chapter in their book. So I'm a contributing author, which is pretty darn cool in itself, which I kind of talk about the creation of moments. So if you really want to go in depth in there, the book is called Reality Bites. Maybe I'll do some Twitter updates on there as well of how it pretty much talks about how it was made. So that initial story I told you about how it was made, I go a little more in detail in a couple pages worth. But yeah, these are just the opportunities I can show you. There's a lot of stuff that it brought out of me, which I think leads to my next slide, which is this one. Right now, I am on an 18-month contract for Studio Lab in Walt Disney Studios here in California. I don't have the longest job title. I wanted to get it, but it's not. But I am the Senior Prototype Engineer and Product Business Developer for Walt Disney Studios Studio Lab. if anyone finds anything bigger than that, please show me. But I think there's only 2 friends I know have a longer job title. But yeah, my job is exactly when I go back to the acqui-hire. It's just like Disney called me and said, hey, we need an entrepreneur. I'm like, okay, like, what do you need? And they're like, we don't know. And I literally did like 13 interviews and came on board for an 18-month contract. And I didn't know what in the world I was doing. But fast forward that, I think I made good 9 months of that now. Yeah, they put me in from engineering, software development, biz dev, product conception ideas, and I do a lot of legal stuff just because I know all the legal jargon, especially from a breach of contract and stuff as well. Like, I'm able to follow along and know the right and wrongs, what's to how to move forward. And like I said, it's one of those things where just me building Moment myself and it being successful, even though it didn't get the full completion, it got me right here, which is pretty darn cool. I'm building stuff for Disney. And yes, if all of you are wondering, I am building stuff for ILM, Marvel, and especially Mandalorian. It's just I can't talk about it. So it's pretty cool. Thank you. Yeah, thank you. So everyone, you're probably saying, well, cool. What about Moment? Like, you got it all back. It was for free. Well, I know this time around, now that I have all this biz dev experience, whatever, I'm collecting a little more research and everything. And actually, this was the demo I showed on Twitter probably a month ago when COVID hit. It kind of brought up, obviously, it's a very horrible case in whichever, but the big thing I do is like I said before, I pay attention to my wife, which the big thing she said is like, okay, well, all my assessment tools are kind of one-on-one with the kid. I'm not allowed to be next to a child due to safety reasons. How in the world do we do stuff? So what you're seeing here is a demo I showed of the Moment app right here that's attached to an iPad, just like that's my beautiful daughter. That's like we're using it. We're using a Zoom call. And then I extract the data from the merge cube, and this goes part of the patent. And if this is the Microsoft data streamer, so data streamer, you stream live data to it or pre-populated data, and it's showing live data while she's going through an app. It's showing the data of the gyroscoping and what emotion's on. So from a Zoom standpoint, my wife can be over here, and the child can be remotely, and whichever she's looking at the cube, it'll reflect that on her Excel spreadsheet. And so from this, I'm building tons of proof of concept. So what I'm doing now is kind of getting big picture business plans out of it to license out or do something else. So that's the thing with Moment. I want to leave time for questions. I don't want to go overboard, which I have actually plenty of time. One of the main things I wanted to talk about, and final things, I kind of just slammed you with a whole bunch of information, so I hope there's a ton of questions I can elaborate on a lot of things. I call this The Last Dance just because, I don't know if anyone saw The Last Dance with the Michael Jordan documentary. It was absolutely amazing. But the one thing I would say, the final thought, and it's more like what I wanted to say, but it will reflect anyone else, especially when you're doing any biz dev or just if you're thinking about being an entrepreneur or creating stuff, is be yourself. You know, one of the things that was mentioned during my interviews on a couple of things, I won't say who, but they're just like, hey, Kevin, you talk too much, or you're too loud or whatever. And I'm just like, and they're like, can you just be someone else? And I'm like, no, that's kind of mean. I put these pictures to really show my personality, but I'm kind of like, I'm not going to fake myself just to get a job and then be there and be myself and then just be on everyone's, bad list. No, just be yourself. And also probably the biggest quote I have underneath that is, thank you, is, and be prepared to fail a lot. I can't emphasize this enough. I mean, I've been in the entrepreneur field since 2017 for 3 years. I think what most people don't know is it's going to be easy. And even when I was going through it, didn't sound like I thought it was easy. Like, hey, I built an app. I have, 10 people that I know use it, and that's 10 people that I know, which are my friends, use it. So, I'm supposed to be up here like a billionaire, right? Like, no, that is not how it works. Even when it came to the acquisition and stuff like that, none of this stuff is how it works. I say be prepared to fail and fail a lot. What does that mean? Failure can go in every area you can think of. It could go from the money-making aspect. You could spend all your money. You could be out of money. And you're going to do some desperate things. I've seen a lot of fellow companies and fellow compadres of myself just like empty their 401ks, empty the bank account, get on their 8th or 10th loan, max out credit cards. And you got to know when the juice is worth the squeeze. And you kind of have to accept it. I tell people, expect to fail a lot. I showed you all the good stuff. I could literally go through 20 plus slides of stuff that failed. Like one of the stuff I did, I want to lock in a Microsoft partnership. It took 9 months to be in their education partnership. And I went to one of their parties. I think I have a picture of it with a couple merge guys. And guess what that meant? That meant I could build stuff with their permission on their platform. I don't get money. I don't get anything else. It was just like, yeah, you could build stuff with us. We trust you. And that's it. And the proposed app I wanted to build was going to be like $250,000. And if I had $250,000, I'd be in my Ferrari right now outside exploring the empty roads. And I don't. But actually, that was a horrible joke. But anyways, the big part about that was be prepared to fail a lot. I told that to any entrepreneur of just like they want to start something, they want to do a side business, whatever. I'm like, be prepared to fail. And your definition of fail goes from every range. It goes from the real severe worst of out of money, I need to do something drastic, or all the way to like you're just not getting anything. Like there's no attraction, no nothing, and you just keep pouring money for no reason. That's a big thing I tell entrepreneurs. During these times too, I felt it was really appropriate for me to reflect on what's going on in the world, but also use something that was aspiring also for this talk, since it's an entrepreneur talk. And I thought this was a great quote by Martin Luther King. If you can't fly, then run. If you can't run, then walk. If you can't walk, then crawl. But by all means, keep moving. And this is like entrepreneurship and also in a nutshell. On top of everything what's going on today, hashtag Black Lives Matter. But the biggest thing I tell people is keep the train moving. Just because I lost that deal with Microsoft where it didn't make any sense, do I stop there and cry and sulk? You're going to do that in the beginning, but keep chugging forward. Keep doing stuff. Did I stop and say, oh, man, my acquisition fell through? Like, what am I going to do with my life? Life's not fair. No. That's one great thing I learned about entrepreneurship and myself is that I do well with failure, and I think that's probably the why Disney and Sony brought me on board, because stuff is going to fail. Stuff's not going to work right, whichever, and you got to push forward. You have to have an answer. There's always something. So I like to keep moving line on here. I always call it the train moves forward. Like, okay, you hit a bump in the road. How do you move forward? Always have an A, B, and C plan. And the last one is, here's the funny stuff is, one does not simply say thank you without a meme. So, of course, thank you for all being here. I talk ridiculously fast, and I try to not go crazy into details. But I left a ton of time for questions, or if you want me to go back to any slides and elaborate more, I am more than welcome to. So thank you very much. I think I opened up to anyone can talk now, or I don't know how we moderate any of this fun stuff.
Yeah, thanks, Kevin.
Great.
Everybody give a round of emoji applause. Kevin and Mia's going to come up and take some questions in a second.
Cool.
All right. Thank you, Kevin. That was great. That was awesome.
No problem.
All right. So I'm going to enable you guys to ask questions. So you should see a hand pop up in the bottom right, I believe, and you can click on the hand if you'd like to raise a question. And then in the order that you've raised your hands, we will give you permission to speak. All right, Stones is the first one, and I will give you the megaphone.
Yes. Was the Cube just a software app, or was it a piece of hardware that worked along with the software app?
Yeah, so the Merge Cube here, let me go to a picture of it. Yeah, I'll go right here. So the Merge Cube was a whole, So the Merge Cube itself is a whole third-party device. So you can buy it right now on Amazon or Walmart. I think it's all the way up to $19.99 now. Merge themselves, it was from an entertainment company. They transitioned to an education company. But pretty much it's a third-party device. So developers like me can build apps that relay on top of it.
So it's a hardware device then?
Yeah, it's like a hardware device. So when you get it, it's like a squishy cube with unique hieroglyphics. So what they kind of did was got Vuforia on it and an SDK'd the gyroscope. And actually, I think that's a patent pending feature. But so it's a gyroscope Vuforia block. It's a foam block. You can buy it and you can chuck it at people. It's like a Nerf block. But you can see the little indentations on each side. That's how it tracks it. It's in the back technology is Vuforia.
Okay, great. Yeah, I didn't quite understand that. Thank you very much.
Yeah, no problem. I was going to put a video on it, but I wasn't sure on the lag on the app itself. But if I can go back to previous slide. Yeah, so you see if in real life, this would just look like a block, but this is taking a picture of my a screenshot of my phone, and you can see like once you put it on it, the images go on top of it, or like with this one is the inverse, where I put images inside the cube, and obviously with your goggles or your phone, it just replaced the cube with an actual augmented reality 3D object that you code in using the game engine, which was Unity.
Okay, so it was an augmented, like it says there, it's an AR.
Yeah,
hardware software combination.
Yeah, it's a flavor of augmented reality. Like I said, I mean, one of the basic forms of augmented reality is just like a marker, right? Which you point at something and an object pops up. And all Merge did was they built an actual physical block on it. Unfortunately, you have to buy the block, but I think as of right now, especially during the COVID times, you'll actually be able to download a paper block, and you can actually build it and test with their apps right now. So actually, you could download that paper block right now and download my app, which is totally free. Just type in Moment AR in the App Store, and you can mess with it right now.
Okay, thank you very much.
Yeah, no problem.
All right, thank you. And the next one is John, actually. I think.
Yeah, it's me. Sorry.
Okay.
Yeah, so once we get done with questions, we'll just open the floor up and people can kind of mingle and stuff. So Kevin, this is sort of a comment, but I'd be interested to see if maybe you could elaborate a little bit. There's a saying that I believe goes something to the effect of perfection is the enemy of done. And it sounds like you basically went from like 0 to 100 in like 5 months. I see
pretty much
spend like years, like they're like, okay, I need an MBA, and then I need this, and then I need to consult with lawyers to talk about this, and then we need to get all of our ducks in a row, and then 5 years later, maybe I actually accomplished something, and maybe I didn't. It sounds like you basically were like, let's just roll with this, which is doesn't seem like a typical thing. So maybe could you comment on that?
Yeah, so I think my mindset goes back to my post-production experience. Remember, I reverted to, I have a big post-production background, and I worked at Dolby Vision and Sony, but the mantra of being a post-production engineer is things have to work. Meaning, like today's Friday, right? Let's say on Monday we owe the last reel of the next Star Wars movie. There is no pushing that date. That is an official date. So I got to make sure from now all the way till Monday morning that there is 1 or 2 deliverables of the same thing, no matter what. Like there is no failure is not an option, which is like a horrible sci-fi movie slogan. But that's with me doing 10 plus years of that mantra in my head. So I'm always thinking about solution A to solution E to solution Z. You know, so regarding this, I think every aspect I did had a lot of ideas, but going to new fields like business development where I have no clue what I'm doing. You know, I have some answers, but I had to go straight to the failure, which was, like I said, when I opened up to the iOS floor, I waited 2 weeks, and I'm like, I only made 8 sales. Like, that's not good, you know, especially for the money I pumped in building it. So, yeah, to answer that, it's a unique skill set, but it's one of those things I think everyone can do it of just like, okay, you go in with a plan. What's your A through Z plan? Like, what's your backup to your backup to your backup? But also, what are your realistic expectations? Like, if your expectations were, I got initially was like, I think I could be a millionaire in 2 weeks. You just don't think that. You know, I think every entrepreneur is going to run into that. Money is going to be a default answer, as it should be. You know, I mean, you're doing this to make money. You're doing this to make a living. But also the big parts about it as well is you know, what do you do when you fail a lot as well? Or if anything is, is the juice worth the squeeze is another aspect of it. Or is the third realm, which is like, are you going too much to do something very basic? So to analyze that, what if I went straight to just building an app without building the proof of concept, without giving it to my wife? I'm like, I'm just going to build it, you know, whatever I perceive because it's a need out there. And because a lot of companies do that, right? They build something, it releases to the wild, and I'm pretty sure some educators are like the same thing. I'm just like, you built this, but like, who's going to use it? You know, I hate to use words here, but I'm like, a good example is I was going to buy the Magic Leap, but I'm not knocking it at all. But when I found out the dev kit was going to be $3,000, I'm just like, well, $3,000, my gosh, where the dev kit for the Merge Cube was a $15 cube, you know, and the device is like, I can piggyback off devices that my wife uses, which like her cell phones and everything. That made more logical sense for me to go with, and that's why I went with augmented reality rather than a VR aspect. So your question does open up a ton of stuff. I just think from my background and how I did everything with like an engineering background, I kind of had to answer a little bit to everything. But like I said, most stuff I talked about in this chat was more stuff off the positive and the great things of it. There's tons of things that either didn't work well, a lot of failings, and to be honest, a lot of things between my wife and I, because you turn your wife into a business partner, and the arguments can get escalated and everything just because now she's that scapegoat buffer. So, yeah, I mean, that opens up a lot of stuff. But to really answer that, I just think from my engineering background, I think that helped me out a lot naturally, just to being the guy that always has to have an answer, like nothing really halts.
Cool, thanks.
No problem. Sorry, I think I answered that with a ton of philosophy and everything built into that, but yeah, sorry about that. Mia, was there any other? Oh,
I
No,
don't think
I was
so.
gonna
I think
say-
that was the
Yeah.
end of our questions that were in the queue
Yeah.
anyway.
yeah. If anyone here, would anyone like me to elaborate anything? If not, we can probably just I could probably just stay here and we can talk one-on-one or whichever. It's no big deal. But if anyone wants me to elaborate or anything else, please come up to me. I could go to any slide and we could talk about it.
Cool. So let's everybody give Kevin a round of emoji applause. What we usually do is if anyone and everyone wants to hop up on the stage real quick. There's a robot in the sky up there who's filming. If we can pop up on the stage and we'll just do a quick round of emojis, and then we can just mingle or do whatever you want. But thanks a lot, Kevin. We really appreciate you coming by. This was kind of cool.
Yeah, no problem. This was great. Thanks for the invite.
Anywhere on the stage, it should be visible, I believe. Whoops. My headset. There we go. Cool. So if you're on stage and everybody's up here, go ahead and give a quick round of whatever emoji you want to give. Claps, hearts. Awesome. Really appreciate it, Kevin. Story I didn't know, so I was pretty fascinated to kind of hear your background. That's kind of
Oh, thank you. I know. I feel like
That's really cool.
I feel like I really went through it. So, like I said, if anyone wants a more engaged talk, or if you guys get any feedback on certain specific portions, I'm more than happy to come back. There's a good couple slides in there that I could elaborate into a whole talk in itself.